Okay, we'll call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. Need a motion for adoption of minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on Monday, June 13th, 2016 be adopted as circulated.
By Councillor Budds, by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have one delegation this evening, and Mr. Lauren Henry and Ron Rodluck and Mr. Blight. Feel free to take the podium and the mic. And I'll just ask the delegation to limit your time to 5 minutes. We have a fairly heavy agenda this evening.
Mayor Ferris, I don't know if, sorry about that. I don't know if your person that generally reads something like this out would do that. I'd just like to comment on it. If somebody could read what we sent in to you.
Do you have it? One from today.
Here, I'll read it.
The previous one. There's two.
There's two documents there, Lauren. There's one from today that Mr. Rodluck just furnished us with, and then the previous one. Is there?
Yes. Well, the first one, the one that the petition was on.
Do you have that one?
It's all the same.
I've got it. I'll read it. Okay. Do you want me to read it now, sir? Or
If
later?
you wouldn't mind, please.
Sure. We, the undersigned, petition the City of Portage Prairie to restore Crescent Road as the historical prime residential street of the city. Crescent Road faces Crescent Lake, the golf course, Island Park, etc., and accordingly has always demanded the highest taxes. Due to how developments in the west end and east end of the city, including schools, Crescent Road has become a cross-town highway. Often Crescent Road is handling a lot of traffic that should be on Saskatchewan Avenue. We propose installing stop signs on Crescent Road paralleling all the traffic lights located on Saskatchewan Avenue. The lights on Saskatchewan Avenue have never been timed better than they are today. The stop signs would help convert Crescent Road traffic to Saskatchewan Avenue where the businesses are located, which is very important for the businesses, and reduce the noise level and congestion for the residential homeowners on Crescent Road. Our aim is to get Crescent Road back to the prime residential street that it once was and recognized as such historically.
And you could read the
resolution. So first resolution, Crescent Road residents with driveways that lead onto Crescent Road can back out onto the Crescent because of heavy, fast traffic, just too dangerous. Number two, many small cars and trucks now have extremely noisy exhaust system, louder than most semis. Number three, a lot of these vehicles, after pulling on to Crescent Road, gun their motors to pick up speed fast. The result is homeowners can't hear TVs in their houses because the noise drowns them out. Number four, for the above reasons, we recommend the speed limit on Crescent Road should be lowered to 40 kilometers per hour. And number five, many U.S. towns and small cities have 25 mile per hour speed limit, even on their main thoroughfare. This would help get traffic onto Saskatchewan Avenue while making it quieter and safer for Crescent Road residents.
I would just say when we first started, a bunch of us had talked about it quite often here, there, and the other place. And our first reaction was the traffic was going so fast and seemed to be so intent on just going down that road that it made it very unsafe in a lot of areas of the road. And when you think of school kids going down the school zone being at 30, and then those same kids walking down the path and then crossing on all the other streets to go north, and here they're going, well, you know, we have 50, but from talking to the people that do those, you know, posted speed something and your speed, they indicated to us their Crescent Road's one of the worst streets they had for faster than normal traffic, faster than the speed limit. So I say the kids got to get across there, even though they're not right at the school, they got to get across somewhere. That's just a point I'd like to make. That was our first thing, was to put a stop sign. When we first started talking, I think we're also displeased with the noise and the traffic and all the other problems that were there. and it had really turned the residential street into, like I said, a crosstown highway. When we looked at it further and talked more as time went on, we thought maybe what would be better than a stop sign at every parallel to the light on the avenue, that we would say get down to maybe 3, at least start with 3, probably at 18th Street, 8th Street, and 4th Street. And we'll talk, I think Ron will talk a little more about the 4th Street one. And because I think along with the 40 kilometers, we also have to have a few stop signs just to get people down. And I think the school zones help to a degree, but they surely don't help with everybody, because we walk down the Crescent all the time, and we quite often try to walk a couple of blocks on the side of Crescent to get home if we come out, and and some people are fine when we go to walk across. The odd one will stop courteously, and then we look the other way, and sometimes the other guy coming the other way will stop them too, but that's occasionally. And some of them just seem to be so intent on where they're going. You better walk close to the curb, and you're supposed to be able to park a car on the right-hand side when you're going west. You got to walk pretty tight to that curb, because some guys aren't near the yellow line, they're way over there, and they're zooming right along. So I think that the 40-kilometer speed limit, I've tried it lots of times. In fact, I usually go 40 down the Crescent. You move along pretty good. That's pretty well complementary to 25 miles an hour. But that seems to be a lot better speed to have the cars going at and keep it safe. But I don't think it can do it alone. I do think, although we don't need all the stop signs we talked about in the first place when we first talked about it and were pretty disgusted with what was happening, I think we do need probably at least 3.
Okay.
And that might do the trick. I know you've got other delegations, so I don't want to take too much of your time. We can enlarge on anything. We can come back to another council meeting. We can talk to the members of your council.
Okay.
If you want anything cleared. I think Ron would like to.
Okay.
Mayor and Council. My concern was really sort of the safety issue, and it certainly complements what else has been going on. In the sheet, what I've done is I've done a few surveys, and I'll just, if you want, I'll read it. And the traffic has increased significantly on the Crescent over the last several years and has become a safety concern, as well as the road damage for excessive overload, which appears is more than what the road was built to handle. The road is deteriorating and seems to be sliding towards the lake, and long separations forming in the road. A random sample survey was taken to help illustrate the amount of daily traffic observed, taken between the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. over a 10-day period, excuse me. And in an off hour, you're talking 63 to 69 vehicles in a 10-minute period. That averages out at 360 vehicles an hour. And the rush hour traffic count in the morning was at an average of 84 vehicles for a 4 10-minute period, or 504 vehicles per hour. More samples were taken for clarification. Thank you. The count returns to the off-hour numbers between 9:30 and 9:45 to over 60 vehicles in a 10-minute period. The afternoon rush hour, however, between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. was 653 vehicles for that hour. My residence is next to a daycare home, and I encourage those that can to use my driveway and turnabout to load and unload the children, as it's too dangerous for those who aren't able to pull out of the traffic to disembark. This home is approximately 150 feet from the staggered intersection of 4th and Crescent Road, which is presently marked as a crosswalk to the lake and the walking path. This is the school turnoff, the Crescent, for school buses and students. My concern is that if the traffic isn't somewhat reduced or impeded, that will result in a very serious accident or a fatality, as there have been numerous close calls and a history of accidents in that stretch of the road.
Thank you, Mr. Rodluck. And we will take this information under advisement. We're going to ask administration to check a couple of avenues for us. Some of these suggestions involve another level of government, and we will probably be wanting to sit down with you again and ask some more questions in the future.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Barrett, are you taking questions on this now? Or
No, at the very end, question period is after committee. Committee comes after council, so that's towards the end of the evening, Mr. Blanchard. Okay, we'll move into hearings. We'll open the hearing for variation PC 23-16. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing?
I'm just here for the owners of the lodge, and I'm asking questions.
Answer questions? Okay. Your name, sir?
Justin Kirshner?
Thank you. Okay, motion?
Resolved that the public hearing for variation PC 23-16 Kirshner 10 Spence Lane now be closed, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Dreger, second by Councillor Fraze. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Justin and Laura Kirshner are applying for a variation order to allow for the construction of a new single-family dwelling. It is the recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage Prairie approve the variation request of Justin and Laura Kirshner to vary the front yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 6.096 meters and the rear yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 7 meters at the property known as 10 Spence Lane, which is legally described as Lot 3, Block 3, Plan 53601, Parish of Portage Prairie, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Dreger and seconded by Councillor Fraze. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for conditional use PC 2616. This is priority permits at 25 25th Street Northwest. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing?
Yes, sir.
And your name, sir?
Ross Sheard,
The last?
S-H-E-A-R-D.
Okay, thank you.
Resolved that the public hearing for conditional use PC 26-16 priority permits 25 25th Street Northwest now be closed, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Dreger, second by Councillor Fraze. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Priority permits have applied for a conditional use to allow for an electronic message board. McDonald's restaurants across Canada are updating their signage. It is the recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage Prairie approve the conditional use application of priority permits to allow for an electronic message board in a C3 Avenue commercial zone at the property 25 25th Street Northwest, which is legally described as lots 1, 2, Plan 2022, Parish of Portage Prairie, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Dreger and seconded by Councillor Fraze. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll move into committees. First up is Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. First item, as we discussed in the committee meeting last council meeting, was the award of land lease tenders. As you are aware, several areas of city-owned land was put up for lease. The lease had renewed or had expired and needs to be renewed. Sorry. We did see that there was several people that were interested, and some in multiple properties, and the price that was submitted for leasing is as outlined. There was some discussion at our council meeting about the possibility of entertaining some contracted funds that were not the highest bid, because it was a local farmer that was interested in purchasing that. I guess under some additional investigation is Thiessen Acres Limited does in fact own more other land within city boundaries. So a decision has been made to uphold the recommendation, and I can tell you that administration continues to work on presenting to council and through my finance committee some, I guess, preferred or city council have discretion on a local purchasing policy. But stay tuned for that. That's probably not going to be for another meeting or two. So it is a recommendation of Finance Committee that the Council of the City of Portage Prairie authorize the lease of city-owned land as legally described on the attached maps to the following. Area A, Teeson Acres Limited, for $21,170 per year plus GST. Area E, Sissons Farm Limited, for $1,256 a year plus GST. Area F, Sissons Farms Limited, of $606.30 a year plus GST. And Area G, SB Vegetable Growers Limited, for $10,757.50 a year plus GST for the period of December 1st, 2016 to November 30th, 2021, and that the mayor and the manager of administration be authorized and directed to execute the leases on behalf of the city of Portage Prairie and to affix the corporate seal of the city thereto, and to do such further and other things necessary or incidental to carry out the terms of the agreement.
Moved by Councillor Buds, seconded by Councillor Dreger. Any comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Second item that I went through in committee was our mill rate comparison, and that is for your information. It does show where the city does stand in relation to its peers, and we still rank higher than I would like, I guess, when we compare our peers, and it continues to be the focus of driving efficiencies on how we operate our city. So again, just for information only. And finally, I went through this in a more detailed process at our committee meeting, and subsequently I'm now moving the 2017 budget process be changed. The detailed report is attached. So it is a recommendation of the Finance Committee, and I so move that the modified program budgeting approach be utilized to set the 2017 budget, and that all discretionary items over $10,000 and all staffing increases be presented for committee's review, that a list of all new and additional services and capital items with a tax increase effect to be presented separately for the committee's consideration.
Moved by Councillor Buds, seconded by Councillor Wall. Any comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And just before I hand off my Finance Committee report, I'd just like to mention to Council that I will be in attendance for the remainder of the Council meeting, but I am unable, due to a scheduling conflict, to stick around for committee. I do have one item on my committee report, which Councillor Wall will be presenting on my behalf.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Buds. Councillor Dreger, please.
The Economic Development Committee has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Fraze, Community Services Committee, please.
Thank you, Worship. There's a number of items on the agenda for tonight. The first of which is regarding the Blue Dot Committee. There, at the December 14, 2015 meeting of Council, the group made a presentation to Council requesting a declaration be signed regarding the right to a healthy environment. And they did provide a sample declaration. The city has, over the years, been committed to the protection of the environment through appropriate and feasible strategies, including such things as the introduction of a larvicidal program, the ceasing to use chemicals for weed control. We currently run a very responsible recycling program. We have replaced light bulbs with LED lights, and various other efforts, including a proposed upgrade to our wastewater treatment plant to reduce nutrient loading in our effluent stream. And so our sense is that the City of Portage currently has a very strong commitment to protecting the environment when and where it's appropriate. The Blue Dot organization represents the David Suzuki Foundation, which is working across Canada with a variety of organizations, including municipalities and provincial governments, with the ultimate goal of seeing the right to a clean environment enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Human Rights. And they did provide a sample declaration which administration reviewed and developed a list of questions which are included in the report. Questions regarding what the implications would be for our city in signing this declaration, especially in terms of how much political action is required on our part to pursue a national agenda. And in further pursuing the issue, administration did consult with a number of other communities, including the city of Steinbeck, Morden, and Selkirk, who have either signed a modified version of the Blue Dot Declaration or in some cases not considered adopting the document at all time. at this time. So given that the city of Portage and its council, its staff and administration already pursue, where appropriate, environmental issues, it is a recommendation of the Community Services Committee that the Council of the City of Portage Prairie decline at this time the request from the local Blue Dot Committee to sign the David Suzuki Foundation Declaration to the Right to a Healthy Environment.
Moved by Councillor Fraze, seconded by Councillor Dreger. Any comments or questions on the motion?
I would
Councillor
just
Dreeben?
like to say that I think administration did a very good job of reviewing the document. And like Councillor Fraze said, we already do a lot of things that promote a healthy environment, and I think this is a good move.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to state that even though if it goes forward that the council does decline the request of the Blue Dot Committee, that we are definitely looking at the environment when we are making all of our decisions, and our administration and our management team does a great job of looking for alternatives at the moment to be as environmentally friendly as possible. If it goes through and it's declined, that's no way it shouldn't be seen that we are not looking to be environmentally friendly. We find that we do a fairly good job of that already, but we probably, some of the questions that administration did provide for us would seem to tie our hands a little bit if we were to sign the declaration and things were not to go in exactly the direction that the foundation would like them to go. And therefore, I think it's probably a good idea at this time to not move forward with the Blue Dot Committee's declaration.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Draycott. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Fraze?
If I could just add to the report I read, the city has been actively pursuing an official community plan, which will include in its structure quite a few sections relating to environmental issues, and they're outlined on the written report here for you to look at, and I think they would address pretty much all of the items that the Blue Dot Declaration would include.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution? And that's carried. Thank you. Councillor Fraze, item 2.
Item 2, the mosquito control policy, which we looked at last committee. There's been some new information on that, and we are suggesting that we defer this item to the July 11th, 2016 meeting.
Okay. Item 3.
You need a motion.
Sorry. Sorry. Motion moved by Councillor Fraze, seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
The third item, Your Worship, is the Crescent Lake Use Citizen Committee report. At the June 11th Community Services Committee meeting, Derek McCutcheon of the Crescent Lake Use Citizens Committee presented the findings of that committee and their recommendations. This committee was appointed by City Council when it was discovered that City Bylaw 05-8279 is not enforceable. In other words, what we decide to do with the lake is subject to the approval of the federal government under the Shipping Control Act. And the current situation where we have set some restrictions on boat use are unenforceable. So it's up to council to develop a new policy and present it to government for approval. And that was the context in which we put out a survey for citizens to respond with their views on how the lake ought to be used. In fact, specifically whether boats ought to be allowed, power boats ought to be used. And that survey came back with a majority of citizens not in favor of power boats on the lake. And council took that into advisement and then appointed a committee to look at those results and further stakeholder interest groups, including the RM of Portage, Long Plain First Nation, Portage School Division, the Regional Recreation Authority, the Golf Club, the Province of Manitoba Department of Conservation. They also did some research on available documentation regarding the quality of the lake and past uses. There were a couple of suggested restrictions. The school division was concerned about safety on the lake on the west side, when students are engaged in canoe instruction. The province did have some concerns and registered them regarding the transfer of invasive species, specifically zebra mussels. And so the Lake Use Committee compiled all this information and created a report which they presented to council last meeting. And we are currently faced with a decision as to how to respond to that report. And it is anticipated that once we do make a decision and submit our recommendation to the federal government, the Department of Transportation, they would come back with their approval sometime before September of 2016. Oh, sorry, I'm misreading this. We would have to present it by September 15th. Approval would not likely be available until spring of 2017, sorry. So in light of that series of investigations and recommendations, it is currently the recommendation of the Community Service Committee that the Council of the City of Portage Prairie apply to the Minister of Transportation to place the following restrictions on the use of Crescent Lake. And I guess I ought to restate the fact that if we don't place these restrictions on the lake, we go back to having no restrictions at all, technically. So the restrictions that we're asking for at this point are that A, the use of Crescent Lake by power boats would be limited to the summer period between the May long weekend and the September long weekend, that it would be limited on Wednesdays from 1,600 hours to 2,200 hours, and on Saturdays, Sundays, and statutory holidays from 1,000 hours to 2,200 hours. B, that boaters would be licensed and subject to prosecution for breaking boating regulations. The Crescent Lake Use Citizens Committee recommends 3 specific prohibitions for Crescent Lake powered boat use. Those 3 are no towed inflatables, that's dinghies or inner tubes, no fueling at the dock, and only four-stroke engines or modern 2-stroke engines, that is engines that do not discharge directly into the water, would be permitted. The third and maybe most important part is that Crescent Lake to the west of the bridge is to be entirely preserved as a nature refuge. No motor-powered boats, electric or gas, would be permitted. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Prairie, seconded by Councillor Dreger. Any comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Dreger.
Well, I think it has certainly been an interesting week as the opinions of the different citizens in Portage La Prairie have come in. And I'd personally like to thank everyone who's here tonight to hear the outcome of this vote, and also those who sent in their emails, and also to the Lake Committee for their recommendations. Personally, I'm going to be voting for these recommendations, and it's not that I think they're perfect, but I think it's a good start towards seeing more people using the lake. My other reason for voting in favor of this recommendation is that a lot of the opinions that I heard came from young people, and I have not had that experience since my time on council, where I've had so much input from the younger folk in our community, and they're the ones who are going to be our leaders in the future, and they're the ones who are coming up with the new ideas. And I think that it is just in light of that, I just want to give them a chance to use the lake in the way that they think it should be used. And so I'm going to be voting in favor of this recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dreger. Further comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Wall.
Yes, Your Worship. I'd also like to thank the committee for their diligence and the hard work, also the city staff who acted as their advisors. I would like to see Crescent Lake used more as an extension of our active transportation system. I'd like to see more canoes. I'd like to see more kayaks on the lake that I don't think mix well with motorboats. But I also take into consideration the recommendation of Manitoba Conservation and Dr. Jones, who talked about the 120 waterfowl species that are present out there, and I'd like to promote that further for bird watching, for tourism, and so on. And so I'll be voting against the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Further comments or questions on the motion?
Go ahead.
Councillor Buds, I take it?
Yeah. Thank you. I think I mentioned in a committee, I thank the committee, and I'd like to echo Councillor Treger's comments with regards to the public interest in this issue. It's no secret that I have been a proponent for additional use of Crescent Lake for quite some time. I will be voting in favor of this recommendation. I don't think it's a far stretch in the use of our lake. It is a limited time zones and limited time availability for boaters. I don't think that anyone's going to imagine Crescent Lake becoming a mecca of boating enthusiasts. There's enough restrictions on there that prevent that. When we look at some of the limitations that our city's had in the past, and Councillor Treger's comments about looking into the future, it really is whether or not this council has the courage amongst or in the midst of some controversy over what to do with our lake, on whether or not we want to provide an environment that's conducive to a way of life in Portage. And there's been many comments about what are we doing with our lake, it could do more. I believe this is a first step in the further expansion of one of the city's crown jewels, and we can do that. We can do that in harmony with nature, and it's been proven that it's been done in many, many places before. I see Mr. McCabe in the gallery here, and I sat around a table where people said that in the wintertime we couldn't put a skating path around the lake, or we couldn't put an outdoor skating rink because we've tried it before, it hasn't been done, and I think this winter proved that. We've got to be able to, as council, be leaders in some of the decision-making process here, and I believe by voting yes on this, we are showing the citizens that we are willing to take a step in a direction that promotes what we have from a recreational standpoint in our city. So I guess that concludes what I have to say. Then I will be voting in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. Further questions or comments? Councillor Draycott.
I guess I would make a few comments just off the cuff. I am a boat owner. I spend a lot of time on the river, mostly on the white mud. We spend a lot of time on the river with ducks and loons and cormorants and fish and lots of other things, and we have a good time on the river. We either fish or we tube. That good stuff, good family time. My kids love it. They would like nothing other than to go to the river and spend time on the boat. And it is their parent time, our time with our kids, and we have such a great time there. That being said, we will not be putting our boat on Crescent Lake because we have a large boat and a pontoon boat, if anybody's interested. But that being said, our boat is too big for Crescent Lake. And I think in talking to a lot of other boaters, they see no issue with being able to take boats onto the lake. And then their side comment is, but I probably won't be taking mine out there. Because I think that the lake will restrict who can get out there and who can't. If you're a boat owner, you probably know what your boat can handle, and it's probably not the depth of Crescent Lake if it's a substantial sized boat. That being said, I did hear a lot of concerns. I heard a lot of concerns as to why are we looking at boats on Crescent Lake again, and for that I would just like to state that if we weren't looking at boats on Crescent Lake again, then boats would be going on Crescent Lake. That is it. If we don't decide, then boats can go on Crescent Lake. So that's the alternative. There are quite a few people pro-boat and quite a few people against boats that all suggested that we don't put anything in place for different reasons. And some of that I think is probably a good theory behind it as well. Just looking at the vessel operation restriction regulations, that the reason that we're looking at it is they say that they are the last resort for solving this problem. That your stakeholders working together can often find more timely, effective, and affordable solutions, and that they are the solution if you can't agree on a solution within your community, because it will be hard to lift any restrictions that we put on the lake. I feel that it's probably a good idea to do some restrictions on the lake, and therefore I will vote in favor of this. I kind of echo Councillor Drieger's comments as well, that this is progressive. It's using that jewel that we have while preserving the other side. And I can appreciate some of the comments that we had for environmental issues, for the ducks and the geese that are out there on the lake. Some of the comments that are made are perhaps from people who don't understand how a boat runs properly. My 7-year-old had issues with the amount of oil that would go into the lake. And I assured him that that probably won't be the case, because if your oil is spilling into the lake, your motor's probably not going to run for that much longer. So there were lots of feedback from all of the citizens in Portage, and so I'd like to thank all of you for that, because we did get lots of pro-boat and lots of please don't put boats on the lake again. But I find that, just like Councillor Drieger said, that the young people are the ones that are very much looking at this and looking forward to this. They're the ones asking us for something to do in town, some reason to stay, some reason to bring their family here. This might not be the reason to bring your family to Portage La Prairie, but I don't think it will hurt. And in the restrictions that were presented by our volunteer organization, they are preserving a natural refuge on the other side of the lake. Those geese and their ducks, if they really are upset about boats being there, they will go to the other side of the lake. So I will be voting in favor for the recommendations as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Draycott. Okay, I'll ask people in the gallery to please refrain. Thank you. Any further comments or questions?
I'd like to add to what I read into the report based on the information we had. I think it was a complicated process getting to where we are. I know for myself it's involved some conflict with my own position from time to time, and I do feel that we owe it to democracy to respect those people that we surveyed, and in good faith received from them a kind of a majority opinion that they didn't want to see power boats on the lake. So I'm going to, although I think we did arrive at a reasonable compromise in the recommendation, personally I think I'm going to have to side with, or have my vote registered in solidarity with those people who were surveyed and in good faith thought they were answering for all of the citizens of Portage when they filled out their survey back in spring.
Okay. I'll ask you one more time. Please don't do that while we're in session. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Budds, I'm going to ask you to take the chair. I'd like to...
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
I think council deserves to just outlay the process again for the benefit of the public as it relates to the survey. I know there was lots of correspondence in why are we even entertaining this topic when a survey was completed. And in order for the federal government to take our recommendation on whatever the results were, simply having the survey would not have been adequate. So council recognized early in the process that the survey was one part of the process, and so there had to have been a committee established to take the results of that survey and then extend that to other stakeholders. So I know that there has been some discussion over why do we not just go off of the survey. That and in fact, in order for our recommendations to hold water, if you will, with the federal government, we had to do that. So just it was a two-part process, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. But yes.
Very good point. Thank you. First of all, I want to start off by saying that this issue has, if not polarized this community, has come very close to it. Over the weekend, I know I received, and I shared with my colleagues, probably 60 to 75 emails, a number of phone calls. Of course, people downtown were talking about it. And everybody I've talked to is passionate about it, no matter which side of the issue they're on. They have opinions on it. They have some pretty strong feelings on it. The decision we make this evening will be important. However, regardless of the outcome, the sun will come up tomorrow morning, whether there's boats on the lake or there isn't boats on the lake. So I think that's really, really important. As passionate as we are about this subject, it's really important to remember that. I want to thank the committee that did all this work. I know there were some comments on social media about taxpayers' money being wasted. That committee was unpaid. I'm not sure if Jean-Marc bought them a sandwich when they were working through supper, but they were unpaid. They were volunteer citizens from this community. They did the very best they could. Whether we agree with their recommendations or not, they did a top-notch job. They deserve our thanks and they deserve our respect. There were a lot of people that did not want to do that. It's a very onerous job. You could be very unpopular within your community very quickly once you make a recommendation. You'll be unhappy. There'll be 49 to 51% of people unhappy with you, no matter what you decide. So after that preamble, I'm going to be voting against this motion. And the reason I'm voting against it, as we heard last week in committee, or 2 weeks ago in committee, there was 2 concerns raised by conservation. Neither one of those were addressed to my satisfaction. We also did hear from Dr. Jones about the number of species. I walk that lake every night. I see the ducks and geese nesting along the side. I also see pelicans that have come to the area in the last 2 years. I too view it as an active transportation route. I would love to see more kayaks, canoes, paddle boats. I don't think motorboats at this time, and that's why I'll be voting against this recommendation. However, regardless of the outcome, I will do my very best to carry out Council's wishes on this vote. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions before we move to vote? Hearing none, we have a first and a seconder on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 3. All those against the motion? 3. Tied vote means a defeated vote, so that resolution has not passed, Councillor Fraze. So the recommendation of the committee will not go forward. Now it'll be in Council's decision-making process to see what we send to the federal government, but we will have to have a submission into the federal government by September of this year. And I think that is, without speaking for all of Council, still in the intention to have that done. So we've gone through the vote, we've gone through the voting procedure with the public, and now we voted in our chamber. So would you like the chair back now?
Councilor Butts.
That would conclude my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Fraze. And we'll move into Waterworks Committee. Councillor Wall, please.
Yes, Your Worship. This concerns the award of tender for the construction of the 2016 wastewater sewer renewal contract. We have 2 bidders on this tender, Toll Construction and DF Moon Limited. Tender was advertised in the Daily Graphic on the city's webpage, on MERS, with the Construction Association of Rural Manitoba, and with the Winnipeg Construction Association. Local contractors were contacted. The tender was open Tuesday, June 7, 2016. The pre-tender estimate for this work was $177,000. The work includes Saskatchewan Avenue West, 20th Street Southwest to 19th Street Southwest, 11th Street Northwest to Saskatchewan Avenue and to Gigot Avenue, 20th Street Southwest at Crescent Road to Sunset Drive. The project will be funded from the following budget sources. There's a 2015 utility budget carryover of $111,000, 2016 water main utility budget of $310,000, 2016 wastewater sewer utility budget of $260,000. The remaining 2016 utility budget will be approximately $523,000. And there are remaining projects to be tendered out of those funds. The recommendation is that the Council of the City of Portage La Prairie award the 2016 wastewater sewer renewal contract as specified in tender 16 OPS 018 to Toll Construction Limited for the tendered price of $157,359.51, including taxes.
Moved by Councillor Wall, seconded by Councillor Dreger. Any comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Buds.
I know I've asked this question before, and maybe operations can shed some light on this, but you know, we do have a working relationship with Toll Construction Limited, and they have completed several jobs, but the difference in those tendered amounts is so significant that I wonder, is the interpretation of the tender the same? Some commentary would be beneficial.
Mr. Braden, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I'll comment, but I can't speak for the bidders, but they both got the same document. They may be interpreting the documents differently. In the end, we're interested in getting the sewer work done, and we've always had success with toll construction.
Okay.
Just in addition to that, Councillor Buds, if you look at the details in their tenders, you know, one bidder bids $5,000 to make an opening into a manhole, and the other bids $15,000 for the same opening into a manhole. So it's
I'm going to comment there on that type of discrepancy on a regular basis. That's just what I do.
Nope, that's fine. They do have a long, successful track record of providing services. So, any further questions? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Anything further, Councillor Wall?
That's all I have this evening, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Transportation Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening we did have bylaw 16-8646, amendments to our traffic bylaw 01-8105, drop off at Fort Lorraine School. We were going to do first reading, but I'm asking for the Council of City of Portage La Prairie to defer this until the July 11th, 2016 meeting as well. And
Okay.
I move.
Moved by Councillor Draycott, seconded by Councillor Dreger. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that concludes transportation.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, tonight for Councillor Espy, Councillor Fraze, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The one item we have is first reading of a new animal control bylaw, 16-8647. The existing animal control bylaw was written several years ago with various amendments added from time to time. As a result of these amendments, the bylaw has become convoluted, difficult to read, and fraught with interpretation issues. So for the most part, administration has revamped this bylaw by modernizing its language, removing any process confusion, and reformatting the document. The original intent of the bylaw has been maintained, however. The bylaw places a larger emphasis on avoiding the destruction of animals for unnecessary reasons. There's a number of specific changes. Clause 12.7, Section B was added. All efforts to rehome an animal will be exhausted before the animal is destroyed, unless for medical reasons and only on the advice of a veterinarian. Several sections were combined, such as the hearing processes at Section 19.4 and 5, as well as Section 19.7 was incorporated into Section 20. Some sections were separated to highlight their importance or to remove confusion. To ensure procedural fairness, some principles are respected. Section 19.3, subsection D was added, and the addition states that a decision from the Dangerous Animal Committee of Council will now be recognized as final, where no appeal to Council will be possible. Section 26, formerly Section 24, dealing with enforcement of the bylaw, was revamped and consolidated, rendering the section clearer and less confusing. So with those changes and additions, It is the recommendation that bylaw number 16-8647, being the animal control bylaw for the city of Portage Prairie, be now given first reading.
Moved by Councillor Fraze and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Wall?
Yes, Your Worship, I have a concern with the right to appeal under the dangerous animal portion of the bylaw being removed. And I think we've had some correspondence from the citizen in the same vein, and I believe that there should be a right to appeal, and that council should be the final appeal body.
Okay. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Buds?
Well, I will vote to accept the amended changes and not have council have the appeal process, because I do believe that history has shown that some of the professional opinions of the Dangerous Animal Committee was not maybe necessarily respected in a previous decision, and I think council, quite honestly, doesn't have the expertise to make those decisions when it comes to yes or no in those situations. So I will be upholding the changes, the recommended changes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Buds. Any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? And that's carried.
That would conclude the Public Safety Committee's report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fraze. And there's no deferred business and there's no new business. And we are adjourned at 6:51, and we're going to excuse Councillor Buds, and we're going to move right into committee. And I'd just like to remind people in the gallery that committee is open to the public. It's also open to the media, and we'd welcome you to stay and okay, Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Wall, please.
Yes, Your Worship. Coming up in this portfolio will be the award of a request for proposals to purchase asset management software and training services for the City of Portage. And the report is there for your perusal.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wall. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Dreger.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have one item on tonight's committee meeting, and that is the building reports from the Planning District for the month of May. And we will see in that report that the permits are very similar to last year, a little bit behind, but all in all still a lot of permits being purchased and work being done in the city. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Community Services Committee, Councillor Fraze, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Community Service Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Waterworks Committee has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Transportation Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item on our committee this evening is that deferred item from our council agenda, the traffic bylaw changes and no parking and parking restrictions at Fort Lorraine and on Dufferin Avenue. We have gone through those substantially at previous committee, and so I will leave those unless there's any new questions on it. But we will see first reading at council next time we get together. Secondly, we do have Crescent Lake Causeway functional design update. We do have Eric Lowen here from ACOM. I'd like to invite him up to do a quick presentation for us.
Sorry, the presentation is highly visual, so.
Thank you.
Okay, good to go. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eric Lowen. I'm with AECOM. I'm the project manager and lead engineer for the functional and preliminary design of the Crescent Lake Causeway. I also have with me Philippe Talbot from our office. He's a structural engineer and is also working on the project. So the last time we met was with respect to the functional and conceptual, the conceptual design. And at that point, we came up with a recommendation for a causeway and a bridge structure, which was actually consisting of 3 arch culverts of some type. So today I'm going to give a summary of the work that we've done to date. That will include site survey and geotechnical investigation that was completed back in January. Subsequent to that, there was laboratory testing and the geotechnical preliminary design was undertaken. That had significant impacts on the recommendations for the project so far. We've also done the transportation and geometric preliminary design and further traffic analysis, which now includes pedestrian counts, which we didn't have before, or an estimate of pedestrian counts. And then I'll give a brief update on the landscape architecture and structural preliminary design. Those are still being completed, and an update on the anticipated costs. So the geotechnical conceptual design at the end of that phase included putting the existing causeway, or pardon me, the new causeway as much on top of the existing causeway. The reason for that was to have as little fill as possible and make the causeway option as economical as possible. After doing the geotechnical design, the soils in Crescent Lake, it's not surprising, but they are very poor. However, the total consolidation of underlying soils was anticipated to be in excess of 1 foot, which is it's a considerable amount. And one of the problems that occurs with that is that you get what we call differential settlement. So you're building halfway onto an existing embankment, and with time, one side shifts more than the other. So it's a major problem from a durability and maintenance standpoint. The other problems geotechnically are that the settlement is anticipated to take many years. So it's not just a problem that's done with in 6 months or a year. So one of the things that that we're recommending is that the causeway option now would have the embankments completely off, just overlapping essentially on the edge with the existing causeway. It does increase the volume of material. And in order to mitigate the long time settlement, there's a system of vertical drains that we've used on projects in Winnipeg and around the floodway, which accelerates that long-term consolidation, so that essentially you build the causeway, you run on the temporary causeway for a couple of years, and then you finish off the project. So there's about a 2-year time frame for that consolidation to happen. So it has impacts on the cost, the location shift, and the time frame for the construction project. So just for reference in the upcoming slides, this is the temporary bridge, or pardon me, the existing bridge, and, well, what's called the temporary causeway, but we know it's been there for a while. In these images, PCU is to the left, and Crescent Road is to the right. So this is the 3-lane causeway that was recommended after the conceptual design in 2015. So we had recommended roundabouts at both ends and 2 lanes leaving the island. That had a significant impact on improving traffic leaving after major events. And we had an active transportation pathway to the west of the new causeway. And those were primarily being built on the existing causeway, so we were using that for that pathway and to create more of a park-like setting. So now the image on top, that's the conceptual design of the causeway. So this is now, the lower image is the preliminary design. So you can see that things have been refined a fair bit. The biggest item is that the causeway is no longer on top of the existing bridge, which you see in the upper image. In the lower image, the new causeway is beside the existing bridge. That's not to say we're keeping the bridge, but from a long-term settlement issue, we have to have it separate. It will still become one landmass, though. A couple other things that are significant is the roundabouts have been shifted south by quite a bit. In the lower image, we're actually making use of City of Portage property, so we're not having to push those out into the lake as much. We're tucking it in as tight as we can, getting better roadway alignment. And on the north side, which is to the right in the image, again, that's had to shift east quite a bit to give us better roadway alignment, but it actually is an improvement on overall roadway alignment as well. So that's the complete new image of the preliminary design. And the next few slides, I'll zoom in on it a little bit more and explain a few more things. So that's just a little bit larger. If anyone has trouble seeing, and if anyone has any questions, let me know as we go. I can help point some things out. So the active transportation pathway, that has been developed to a higher level now. So that's from sizing the pathways, the width of them, how they're meeting up into the existing pathways, and how we want those pedestrians to move through. When we did the initial traffic study, that was from a actual vehicle counts after a Portage Terriers game a year ago. At that time, though, there was not a lot of pedestrians. So in discussion with the city, we came to the conclusion that after major summer events, there may be anywhere from 200 to 300 pedestrians leaving in about a 20 to 30 minute time frame. So that's, again, after a major summer event. So those pedestrian counts were put into our traffic model, thus in the form of the worst case then being 750 pedestrians and or a few bikes in a 1 hour time period. And that did have a significant impact on how traffic flowed through. One of the keys of the conceptual design was to have the second lane leaving the island with that dedicated right turn lane. And one of the things that we found was that pedestrian movement crossing, and my pointer's not working right now, but crossing right here, so that's on Crescent Road, and just to the east of the roundabout, those pedestrians at those volumes were really tying up the entire system. So what happens then, cars, that dedicated right turn lane, which if you remember from the conceptual design helped us so much in improving traffic flow, was now being paralyzed by those pedestrians leaving the island. So what we've done is we've recommended eliminating a pedestrian crossing on the east side of that roundabout. That allows this right turn only to be fully functional, and we get back to having traffic flowing a lot better. In the extreme case of that 750 pedestrians an hour, we would expect that traffic would back up about 3/4 of the length of the causeway. The important thing there is it means that it's not backed up into the first roundabout. If it's backed up into the first roundabout, then everything basically becomes paralyzed. So that's not what you would regularly expect to see, and that's a lot of pedestrians in a very short time frame. So we anticipate that it will actually work better than that, but in any case, it doesn't show that the pedestrians do have a significant impact. Just speaking a little bit more about the pedestrian movements. So there's a couple of things that we're trying to do here. Most pedestrians leaving PCU, we expect to cross on the east side, take our main active transportation pathway across. There will be a few pedestrians going this way and this way. One of our concerns in the conceptual design was that if you have too many cars coming out of here, these cars coming out of here can't get in. But with most of the pedestrians coming from PCU crossing here, that allows these cars to come in. So the pedestrians are actually helping get a balance of cars entering that roundabout and getting onto the causeway. When you get to the north side of the causeway, one of the things that we did is we're trying to promote as few pedestrians coming here and crossing here as we can. So what we've done is we've pulled that transportation pathway away from the road, closer to the water. So it's, again, it's more of that park-like setting. You're going, between grass and trees and shrubs as opposed to right beside the roadway. And if you're just, as a pedestrian, planning on going north, what happens then is you're most likely going to take what looks like the shortest route, which is to go here, cross north, and then go north on Royal Road. So that helps prevent jaywalking over here, because you really don't want to be there. And one of the other things it does is not only do you allow this free-flowing traffic for that right turn lane, but you're greatly reducing the chance of a person who's trying to merge here onto Crescent Road with now also having to look at pedestrians at the same time. So it's actually a safer option, and it helps both vehicles and pedestrians travel through better. People can still cross here on the north side, so they can still get to where they want to go, but we're trying to keep as many people on that west side as possible. And it does work quite well when you do that. We also took a look at the truck movements again. Obviously for Mayfair Farms and any large trucks coming off the island, the roundabouts still have to work. And so a couple things you'll see here, and I'll zoom in, but this basically shows truck movements, and this is the large B-train trucks that they have, and we're making sure that you can literally go in any direction through these roundabouts. It doesn't mean it's easy, but these two images show that a big, large truck can basically go in a circle around both of them. So any turn movement can be made, but what we've ensured is that the main north-south, where we want the truck traffic, including going north, because the trucks aren't, I think, supposed to be going down Tupper. At least wasn't the permanent solution. So we're encouraging that north-south truck movement, so that's the easiest movement for a truck to make through here. There's two circles in the roundabout. You see the green circle, that's anticipated to be some sort of landscaping. The gray circle is gray pavers, and the reason for that is so that trucks do need to cross over that. There would be a low lip curb. It's standard for roundabouts. So trucks will knowingly cross over that gray cobblestone kind of area. It's a gray color so that you don't have all these black truck tire marks. It's not as obvious they're crossing it. It still looks nice, and it still functions for everybody. And the other thing that we did here, as we shifted the roundabouts further to the east, you can see the red lines represent the center lines of the roads, and those are still kept in as good of an alignment, or basically perfect alignment, with the existing roads, so that if for some reason roundabouts are decided to be not what Portage wants to go ahead with, we can put four-way intersections at this. And this alignment works either way, four-way intersection. It's optimized basically for both four-ways and for roundabouts. But roundabouts, as we know from the conceptual, do a lot to improve traffic flow off the island. So that's just a little bit of a blow-up of those traffic movements, so you can see the light gray. I mean, you can see how they have to, the truck's got to pull over. He's got some maneuvering to get through there, but, we have 10 trucks a day, it's not hundreds, so we think that's reasonable for them to get through. If there's any questions on that, does anyone have any right now?
I had a couple.
Yeah. Sure.
So the pedestrians, if they want to go to the east, how do they do that? I couldn't see that.
So if you're going to the east, you can cross over here. So you're crossing over where cars are entering into the roundabout. So you're allowed to cross there. It's a 3.5 meter wide path. It's got room for bikes, pedestrians, everything. So the cars coming north have to stop for those pedestrians to cross. We're trying to minimize them stopping for those same pedestrians twice. So if they want to go east, they can go east along Crescent Lake. If they want to get across the street, they would have to go to the next intersection to cross. So the idea was that they would now walk a block before they would go north. If they want to go north on Royal Road, they would just keep going straight, cross over here, and go north. And again, if they're crossing here, they're only impacting less than a third of the vehicles. If they're crossing here, they're impacting all of the vehicles. So.
Okay, and do you face the same challenges with managing the pedestrian traffic with the four-way intersection if you don't use roundabouts?
With the four-way intersections, it's harder to control them because they get to a corner, they can see that diagonal corner, and they'll go whichever way they choose. With the roundabouts, you're able to sort of direct and funnel pedestrians a little bit better. So the pedestrian movements are definitely optimized, and you would have much less risk of jaywalking with the roundabouts, I believe.
Okay. So earlier in the presentation, you mentioned 2 years for completion of the project. Did I hear that right, or?
Yes, so what would happen is in the first season, you would build, and I do have some slides on the staging, but just quickly, in the first season, you would build the embankment. That would mean that traffic would have to go on the temporary causeway, and you would build the embankment, demolish the bridge, let it settle or consolidate for 2 years, and then you would do your pavements, dig out, put your culvert structure in the middle. Like you would have a small culvert just extending what's there temporarily for the 2 years. You would dig it out, put the structure in, put your pavement on, then you put your vehicles on there. Now you would do the rest of your landscaping and finish off your pathways on the old part of the existing causeway. So yeah, it's essentially 2 seasons of work, but a full 2 years in between of settlement and consolidation.
And project completed within that 2-year?
Yeah, so essentially it's over 3 summer seasons really. So it's probably like 2 years, 4 months or something like that, with very little activity in that middle year. Okay. And the final question I have on this part of the presentation is because Councillor Budds isn't here, you mentioned cost. Can you share that with us? No, I haven't put anything in writing here because we're still working on the cost. But in general, when we finished the conceptual, we had the causeway at $6.5 million. We had the Tupper alignment at $7.5 million, and the bridge at $15 million. So with the increase in quantities, increase in duration, and a few other things like that, we are closer to $9 to $10 million with the causeway. Of course, that is still substantially cheaper than $15 million for the new bridge. Long-term maintenance, the causeway is also much less. So it's still, the causeway is still clearly the more economical option, but it's now, 9 to 10 range as opposed to 6.5 to 7.5. But really, the 6.5 option isn't viable anymore once you've done the detailed geotechnical work, because you'd have long-term maintenance. I mean, we just heard about the roadway and longitudinal cracks along Crescent Road. I mean, that's the kind of thing you would see. So it really just doesn't work.
Okay. Did anybody else from council have questions for Eric before he moves on to the next part? Councillor Fraser?
Just in light of the fact that you've now shifted off of the existing causeway, requiring more fill, does the cost difference between the Royal Road and Tupper Street now become the same?
The incremental difference would probably be, they would be not the same, but the gap would not be as large.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you didn't consider shifting that?
Not specifically. You still have you're crossing the water main if you go there. It is longer, and the coming out of the public consultation, even though there was support for Tupper, most people seem to prefer to keep it on Royal and keep it where it was. But that's a good point. The gap would be less.
Yeah. Plus, you wouldn't get to use the existing causeway for your pathways.
Yeah. So one of the other benefits of moving further east is that one of the goals from the landscape architect standpoint is to make it look more park-like, not just like this. The existing causeway right now is very straight, gravel road essentially. Like it'll be contoured and shaped, and it'll look more park-like. And the idea is for the path to use some of that space. So if I go back the slide here, we have this. This is a lookout area. It potentially could be used for fireworks. So that basically gets you right down to the water's edge. So you're using that space and landscaping as nicely as possible, and getting away from sort of a utilitarian causeway look. So.
Councillor Wall?
Yes, just wondering about, you've still got the large diameter culverts in the causeway. Do those extend right through the old causeway in the path area there?
Yeah, so what happens is the old causeway is here, the new structure and culverts are here, basically between there and there. So where the existing part of the causeway is, which is stone fill, that would be completely removed. So the culverts don't get any long, but with this shift, the culvert doesn't get any longer. We're just shifting the endpoints of the culvert. Yeah. So, and yeah, so I mean it's a fairly busy drawing, but we're basically opening this up as soon as we can, and cutting back and shaping back some of that existing causeway. So.
You mentioned the issue of the soil settling.
Mm-hmm.
If you move this to the east, I guess, you wouldn't have differential settling anymore, but you still would have settling? So
you still have the total. So you still get 300 millimeters of settlement, but it's not 300 on one edge and 100 on the other edge.
What about where the culvert structure is? Is that not on piers or something different?
The culvert, I'll get to the structures, but the culverts are on basically floating foundations.
So it would all move together?
Yeah, it has to. Yeah, without amount of movement, you pretty much have to have floating foundations. Okay, I'll carry on. Some of the questions lead into the next section here as well. So landscape architecture, these are images that were presented for the public consultation. Really, they wouldn't look any different at this point. We are going to be updating them, but there's subtle differences. We've managed to reduce some of the grades, but overall length, dimensions, height, width, those things haven't really changed. One thing to point out on the cross section is that the curb lane widths have what's called a shy distance to the traffic barriers. It's 1.4 meters. We don't want to call that a bike lane or label it as such, but it does give cyclists room to go on the road if they want to. We don't want to promote them on the road because then they're entering a roundabout. So it's nicer if the cyclists can stay on the active transportation paths, not enter the roundabout, but there's always some cyclists who will choose to go on the road, and for those that do, there is space for them to go on the road. We don't want to essentially advertise it as such. Again, this image is from the conceptual design. Just from an aerial view like this, there's subtle differences. One of them would be that this pathway is, again, pulled away because we're trying to promote people staying on that path as opposed to crossing. Those that do want to cross, it's still very easy to cross, but your line of sight is basically taking you down to here, really. So a little bit on the structural. So we're looking at steel or concrete arch culverts with retaining walls, essentially 3 arch openings in the structure, and either buried round pipe or arches on concrete slabs. So just to explain those briefly, so really these look quite similar. The top one has 3 round pipes. Now those could be steel or concrete. From a cost perspective, we're assuming it's going to be steel, significantly less expensive than concrete. The bottom has steel arches. Again, could be concrete, but steel is more cost effective, but it's on a concrete slab. So both of those are floating. The nice thing about the concrete slab is the steel arch would be out of the water. So that's the weak point in any steel culvert is the steel corroding. And we're trying to go for an arch look anyway. That's part of our aesthetics. If you have it on the slab, you've got better long-term maintenance. You don't have your steel in the water, so you're not going to have the corrosion and such. And on the raft foundation, all 3 arches and culverts are going to settle together. One thing to keep in mind is that this structure goes in after the 2 years of settlement. So you've had a high percentage of that has already occurred. And we show a pedestrian in there. I don't think it's Jesus. It's just someone walking on the ice. So just so you know. But yeah, that's because those were sized so that you can have skating, snowmobiling, the city's pontoon boat of some sort. with an electric motor, I assume, or paddles. So that's the size for all those things we talked about in conceptual. So, but it does say ice level, it doesn't say water level, so that's why I got a person there. But it gives you a sense of scale. And it is mechanically stabilized retaining walls. There could be some tweaks to that option as well. The main thing is that there's no piles, there's nothing, to bedrock, because everything's going to move, and it has to be able to move with the soil around it. So that's so we have a bit more work to do on the structural and the landscape. Temporary detour. So this image, this is looking south. So you've got the temporary causeway on the right, sidewalk, and of course the bridge on the left. So one of the benefits of building on the further east alignment is that because we're not overlapping the temporary causeway, we can use it throughout those 2 years. So there's a bunch of things that don't work out that good, but then something else ties in to make it work better as well. So we are able to make good use of that causeway over those 2 years. And this is a little bit busy, but essentially we would put the pedestrians on the opposite side of the temporary causeway, because we don't really want pedestrians between the roadway and our construction, especially when they get to a roundabout that is half built, because now they're kind of stranded in there. So we would flip the pedestrians onto the west side of the temporary causeway. We would widen it to 7.5 meters, so you have 2 comfortable lanes getting in and out. And you can see here, we've got, someone turning right can get around there. We're trying to save the trees in there. This still ties into Railroad South. And this is a little bit awkward here, for that 2 years, but we can still turn that in and make that work. And essentially the roundabouts would get built in segments, 2 halves, to allow that staging to continue. But one of the important things is we have a temporary detour that is essentially there and will certainly facilitate construction. But you would be on that temporary detour for 2 years. Brings up the question, like, do you pave it or do you leave it gravel? When you're looking at 10 million, the incremental cost of paving it probably is worth it. I can't remember. Do you remember what the number is? Paving is in the like in the $150,000 range. So, again, you got residents, there's dust. So it might be in everyone's best interest to pave it if that's how we're going forward. So that's basically the end of the presentation, but I can go back to whatever slide and answer further questions.
Okay. Questions from council? Okay, well, I think everybody's just kind of soaking this all up. Eric, probably in the weeks to come, we will have some questions about this. I want to thank you very much for your presentation this evening and all the work you've done on this so far.
Welcome. Yeah, and
questions from the...
No, sorry, it's a committee. It's only council.
So
Councillor Draycott?
I apologize. Just given that it's not available to us in a PDF format, will we be able to get a copy of this for us to be able to access?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Pardon me. I guess because summer was coming, we're in the project. We were supposed to be completely done before presenting, but we wanted to present before people are heading off in separate directions, and we seemingly have almost everybody here, so I think mission accomplished. We were able to give that update before people are taking time off. But of course, we will continue, and then so our next stages are wrap up the structural and the landscape, and then write our report. And if there's another presentation is required, we can do that. But now, when people are reading the reports, they have a little bit of background as well. So probably it'd be easier to digest that information. So.
What's your estimated time frame for the report, Eric?
We take holidays as well. But, I mean, we're fairly close on it, so I would say sometime towards the end of July we should be done.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's a specific urgency. There's still the detailed design phase So I don't see that you'd be constructing anything this year. And there's obviously some things to think about with the increased costs.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming out this evening and presenting to us.
Okay, thanks for all the questions.
Councillor Draycott, anything further on transportation?
That would conclude Transportation Committee this evening.
Okay, thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Fraze, please.
Thank you, Worship. The only thing on the agenda for next meeting would be the second reading of the animal control bylaw we did first reading on today.
Okay, and that concludes your reports? Okay, well, that concludes the committee part. Just prior to moving into question period, I meant to say this earlier. I just want to congratulate our member of council that was able to get his grade 12 successfully on Friday night, and that's Youth Councillor Donovan Hillman, and he is a successful graduate, and congratulations, Donovan. Well done. So for those of you that haven't been here before, question period, council will endeavor to answer questions from the floor. They're not limited to necessarily tonight's agenda. So anybody that has a question for council is welcome to come up to the podium and ask it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have several questions. They're going to sit in abeyance until I ask the report from this engineering firm, ACOM. Are you now looking at Royal Road as the truck route?
Sorry, Royal Road as a truck route.
Stop her right
now. No, Tupper. No. Royal.
Road is a designated truck route.
Royal Road, yes.
Currently a designated truck route.
Royal?
Yes.
Will be the truck route? Yes. Good luck getting the promise. I have several other questions, but I'll take my turn, sir.
Okay.
It is currently. Yes.
Other questions from folks in the gallery? Mr. Blanchard?
Go ahead.
Mr. Romance?
Yes, sir, your worship. Getting back to 2 weeks ago, I questioned you about the paving of the sidewalk between 9th and 12th Street. Ever since then, each day I've been walking back and forth and been counting the number of puddles with all the amount of rains we had in the last couple of weeks. Now, it was said that they're going to pave between 9th and 12th Street. I've counted basically the 2 puddles, one right in front of the Portage and Planning District, large puddle in front of there. There's one next door to it, so there's 2 between those 2 areas. But between 8th and 9th Street, there are 5 puddles. I have to scoot around on the street side, the paved side, to scoot around there. Otherwise, I'd have to go into the private property side. Between 9th and 10th Street, there is only one big puddle, and that's just in front of the veterinary clinic. Can council sort of kind of reconsider and pave it from 8th Street all the way to 12th instead of omitting that one block between 8th and 9th?
Mr. Braden, would you like to comment on that? Operations prepares a priority list for sidewalks. And excuse me if my memory is right, was that not on the other side of the avenue?
North side.
South side.
South side. So it's the south side where the sidewalk
No,
is.
we're talking about the north side.
Okay. Is there any paving plan for the north side this year?
What was presented to council was paving on the south side of Saskatchewan Avenue from 9th Street to 12th Street, southwest.
That I understand.
There are no plans to do anything on the north side this summer.
I thought it was mentioned just 2 weeks ago that that the north side is going to be paved from 9th to 12th. No?
I heard south.
So that's okay. So that means I have to walk down the street then, opposite traffic.
I guess for this year, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Blanchard.
Hi, I have several questions regarding both the Crescent Road and the usage of boats on the Crescent Lake. As a property owner on the Crescent, I've noticed in the past that we've got virtually no speed enforcement on Crescent Road, whereas on a regular basis the RCMP puts a speed trap on the east end of Portage at the Highway 1A East and the CP railway tracks. Is there a reason why there's no speed enforcement on the Crescent?
Well, my understanding is there is, but however, I will defer to our expert, and that's Inspector Head, if you'd like to comment on the enforcement.
There would be speed enforcement there from time to time. It's, if we get complaints from citizens in the area, we'll always, make a move to increase for certain period of times in different areas of the city. So I would encourage you to phone in if you're seeing some speeding, and we'll have vehicles that are doing some speeding, some tracks, as you say, from time to time there.
Okay.
Yeah, we're available anywhere in the city, especially if we're getting calls saying that there's problems in certain areas.
My second question is regarding the intersections and crosswalks. My understanding that every intersection is a crosswalk, whether it's signed as so?
That's a good question. I have to check.
According to the provincial manual for transportation?
I think Jean-Marc had something to say.
Yeah, we don't need to do research. Every intersection of roads is a crosswalk. Pedestrians have right-of-way. The pedestrian has to indicate the intent of crossing, and that's somewhat the problem with vehicle drivers, is they don't necessarily recognize that intent, but every crosswalk and every road crossing is actually a crosswalk.
And that includes a T intersection as
That's
well
correct.
as a cross?
That's correct.
Okay. So along the Crescent, the city has created crosswalks by putting wheelchair access from the north side to the walking paths on the south side, but they haven't put any signage, and nobody stops for wheelchairs or for ladies with strollers. Nobody.
Yeah, we're aware of that.
1 out of
And
20.
yeah, we're aware of that, and we have 2 of them in the planning stages.
4, isn't it, Kelly? 4 crosswalks we're looking at on Crescent itself. 17th, 8th, 17th, 12th, 8th, and 4th East.
I
Okay.
would say that would help with speeding there as well, if there's marked crosswalks.
The design would have a bump out, so to some of the concerns Mr. Henry brought earlier, by reducing the lane traveled, it often acts as a deterrent for speed. Am I wrong?
No, that's correct.
Thank you.
Terminology is traffic calming.
Traffic calming.
Yeah, so currently the only crosswalks that are signed are at the school zones.
Mr. Blanchard, I'm going to ask you to ask us one more question, and then we're going to see if anybody else has questions, and you can always come back so that everybody gets a chance.
Okay, not a problem. The last question regarding the traffic on Crescent Road is, why was traffic taken off of provincial trunk highway 240, being 5th Street Southeast, and then 1A, and then Tupper, and put onto the Crescent Road by designing a concrete structure at that intersection to facilitate traffic going down the Crescent, but not going up 240, i.e. 5th Street Southeast?
That goes back a ways.
I wouldn't know.
I really don't know. Kelly, did that happen during your time?
I don't recall which year, but yeah, it was late 90s. I can't remember the specifics of the design off the top of my head.
It puts extra burden on the taxpayer because the taxpayer pays for the maintenance of the Crescent Road, whereas the province pays for the maintenance of 240. I mean, we're all taxpayers in both regards, but it puts an extra onus on the taxpayers of Portage versus the taxpayers of Manitoba.
Yeah, sorry, we'll see what we could find out about that one, but I don't know when that was.
And plus 240 is the widest road to accommodate the traffic.
No.
I'll come back with my rest of my questions.
Okay. Who's next?
For July 1, Mr. Mayor, the fireworks have been moved to the east. That makes the bridge safe for vehicles and people and the causeway. Would council consider, notwithstanding the indication from last council meeting, would council consider either closing one lane on the bridge or the bridge to vehicles from, say, 10 o'clock to 11, so that people can get out there onto the bridge with their chairs and so on and have a really good view of the fireworks?
I don't know. Can anybody give me a hand with that question?
Your Worship, the reason why the fireworks were moved, and Fire Chief would have more detail, I'm sure, but the PRAs asked for us to move the fireworks so that they can leave the bridge open, so they don't spend $4,000 or $5,000 in security during the day. That was one reason, cut their cost. Whether they could close the bridge for an hour, I guess we could go back to the PRA, or the Fire Chief or the RCB commander might have suggestions on that.
It's safe to say there's no plans for that right now.
No, there isn't.
No plans at this time, Mr. Knott.
Follow-up question, Mr. Mayor. In the last couple of years, snow fencing has been put along Crescent Road, seemingly for no reason other than to keep people on the road. Could we dispense with the snow fencing this year so that people can actually move a couple of meters closer to the lake and sit down?
That's a safety issue.
Chief Carpenter?
What's going to happen this year is the Crescent Road and the bank will be closed to all pedestrians from 4th Street southeast to Royal Road. The reason being that that is a safety zone, fallout zone for our fireworks. It's just on the borderline of where the fireworks have potentially of falling out from there. So therefore, we don't want the general public at all on the street or the Crescent Bank itself for safety reasons.
Okay, thank you, Chief Carpenter. Any further questions?
So what does happen with the boating issue? And I'm not a boater, I just want to see a little bit of activity.
Okay. So when there's a tie vote, normally there isn't a tie vote. Normally there's 7 members of council. Tonight there was an even number. A tie vote means that the motion is defeated. So the recommendations from that committee will not be put to the federal government by September 15th. Council has to decide what kind of restrictions they are going to ask for, but it won't be the recommendations that were presented tonight. That's been defeated.
So when you say that those recommendations will be defeated, does that mean then that council and the mayor will make recommendations to take federal, or who is privy to the information that's going to be presented?
Well, we will certainly make it public before, I would say before we send it to the federal government.
Should that not go through same process that we just went through so that it comes to council once again?
Sorry, so it comes to council once again?
Yeah, because this has been defeated, so the vote is null and void. There is no recommendations on the table.
Right.
It's now left in council's hands to make a decision as to what's going to happen moving forward. I would recommend that it go back to that committee, that if there's going to be some type of accommodation made, that they are involved in that process.
We would have to vote on it again, right?
Yeah, we would have to vote on that again, and
Public knowledge.
My recommendation, just to follow up, would be leave it status quo the way it is. I had a chance to chat with one of the councillors over the weekend, and there has been no issue for the last 60 years in Portage on that lake. It's been open to the public to be able to use their boats on that lake. Today there's no challenge with it. It's only because that Councillor Buds has brought it up and another committee has been involved. I don't see a problem with leaving it the way that it is today. If it is that you want to recommend that something be done on one side than the other, that's fine. I'll point to Okamic Marsh, as well as Delta being the two largest inland marshes in North America. We don't have a problem with keeping our wildlife here and comrades and different types of birds that we have. What we do have a problem with is growth in Portage Prairie. It's been stagnant. To go back to say that what we want to do is have our lake be one of our access routes for, using it for canoes and whatnot. That's been available since the lake's been there. It's actually not the city's lake to make recommendation on, from my understanding. It's federal water.
You're correct on that, Mr. McCabe. The city can ask for restrictions, okay? The federal government will be the ones that decide what, if any, restrictions are put in place. You're correct.
Just to be clear, I don't own a boat, but I am passionate about Portage and I want to see growth. I was born in '72 and I haven't seen it here. I love the city. I want to do what I can to help promote it, and I think this would be a strong thing for younger generations moving forward.
Well, we appreciate your sentiments, and a lot of other people feel the same way. Next question.
I'd like to speak in favor of voting as well. Just wondering what the public consultation...
Sorry, can we just get your name, sir?
Mike Hoekstra. It's a resident here at Portage de Prairie. I'm wondering what the public process will be for what decisions council is going to make or recommendations to the federal government. Possibly more restrictive, less restrictive. I wonder what the public consultation process we can have input into that in order for you to have to make your decision on that.
That's a really good question. There has been a fair bit of input over the last while. I don't know. As far as communicating to the public, anything that's done the discussion will take place in committee. That's open to the press, to the public. Public are welcome to attend. I would certainly expect to see reporting in the media, the local media. Councillor Wall.
Yes, and you can certainly contact any of your councillors at any time to express your opinions, and we do take that very seriously.
Next question.
It's a fun time. I did my homework. I thought the vote was going to be 4-3. So I came prepared to say, yes, I can handle defeat. I realize the majority of the citizens elected you 7 to make decisions, and I'll accept it. But now you threw a curve at me. I have some questions. The one question is, have you got, when you were on the council when they built the causeway to construct PCU, did you get a permission from the federal government to do that?
Yes.
Okay, have you got permission to build the one you want to build now from the federal government?
For the bridge, sorry?
For the new causeway?
Yeah, that will be part of the process.
Because my conversation the last 2 weeks, they told me they control bridges, and bridges have to have enough room between the water and the bottom of the bridge for watercraft to go underneath. And that causeway pictures I saw tonight, there's no way you can put a boat across.
What we'd asked for in design, I guess Eric's still here, was that a tall person could get through on skates, tall person get through in a kayak, canoe, and a skidoo could get through. And I think those would accommodate those 3 things.
And small boats.
And small boats.
So now you're looking at a boat. I figure I win this position tonight because at 77 years of age, I probably got 5 years to go. It'll take you 8 years to get the government to give you all these answers. So I'm a winner. Thank you very much.
Next question.
Last question for tonight, Mr. Mayor. When the contract for the commissioners is over for this year, will you consider not renewing it because you've taken away the parking things along Main Street and there's no need for them anymore?
Well, that's a trick question, isn't it? We would still employ somebody for bylaw enforcement, and that would include parking, whether there's parking meters or not. There's a number of other issues with bylaws. So the short answer is we would employ somebody, commissioners or another group, I'm sure. Any further questions?
One last comment or question, I guess, that I'd like council and yourself, Mayor, to take in consideration when either making recommendation to federal or whether this ends up as a defeated matter with votes. I would encourage all of you to try to drum up one community that has had boating and water access in their community that has not generated additional income or economic growth. So if there's one, please bring it to us as the citizen supporters to show us that so that we can see that it does fail.
Mr. Henry?
I would just want to comment on the presentation from ACOM here in the Causeway. I went to the meetings when that was being discussed. I talked to the people from ACOM. You talk about the settling. The causeway they've got now with the traffic we've had and the joining, there was 2 short pieces of land, part of that causeway that was built in the time when the city was paving all the streets.
Sorry, Mr. Henry, do you have a question?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I thought that we had another, what I saw today was you've only talking about the bridge or these 3 little bridges in the middle, and when this first came up, we talked about just making the causeway wider so it would go where the bridge is now. That was the cheapest way by a mile. And I think we've got a lot of infrastructure here in a lot of places that's going to take a lot of our money. And I guess I could ask ACOM, have you ever driven a semi-V train around those little roundabouts? I've driven them. And it's not easy. And we're spending a lot of money talking about those kind of things. And about the shifting of the ground, I have a question for that, because I don't agree with the fact that the ground is so terrible it'll shift and it won't move, because when they paved the city, they put dirt at this end on the west side of the bridge and they put it on the other end, and they came at least 1/3 of the way across each side, and then that was joined with the rock and the thing when they did PCU, and so I'm really wondering where that plan went. It was, you know, like the trucks and everything have been going across there, big, small, indifferent, whatever, and it hasn't moved. And it was just dumped in there. There was nothing. There was no rock on the bottom. There was nothing. So it didn't shift very much. And it's not shifting compared to the place where the rock is. So my question is, why would we consider spending all that money to get fancy with there? I think the lake can help Portage. I think it does already. We've had power boats, we've had water ski training on the east side, we've had a lot of things over time.
Okay, I guess my answer to your question, Mr. Henry, would be, sorry, we're not engineers and we rely upon that expertise. We're not going to be doing our own engineering. We're going to seek out expert advice, and we're going to listen to it.
I guess I would just say that, like I said at the start, my question is, if we're going to do a lot of infrastructure in Portage that needs to be rebuilt, like the west end of Saskatchewan Avenue, and a lot of other places too, not just there, all over the place, we have to fix infrastructure. It's getting old. And to get something as fancy as I see being put forward here tonight, I have a big question on that. Whether we should be putting the money in that direction, or we should be going with the lesser cost there. And you can make it look as nice as you want with grass and trees and a few things around the side. You can make it look just as good as that, and without all those turnabouts. And it's a lot cheaper, because we need the money for other things. So I hope the council, I'm asking, are you going to consider that in the future? Because I think it's important.
Well, I can certainly tell you one of the things that caught my attention, I think it did everybody, obviously there's a cost increase on the estimates tonight. We heard about that. Everybody heard that. We don't have the final number. But I can also tell you this, that the current bridge we had was built in 1929. It lasted us many, many years. This one will be here a long time after all of us are gone. I am not going to be content to build something that's not going to last and not be something the community can be proud of, something that looks good and functions well. So for myself, and I'm not pretending to speak for all of council at this moment, certainly we'll spend the money to build a good bridge that's going to last and serve the community, yes.
Okay, I was thinking more of, Mayor, thinking more of the causeway versus having, and the bridges. That's what I was talking about, because when I went to ACOM's meeting here, my understanding was they had about 4 different things they could do. One, they could go across to Tupper Street. Tupper Street was never built for trucks, so that's the wrong place. Royal Road was. So that's where the truck should go. And I think it can look just as nice whether it goes around a curve or whether it goes straight across to where it's going.
Yeah, this design has been chosen. It was chosen quite some time ago, and yeah, this is the one that's been chosen, the 3 arches.
Okay. Well, I didn't know why I don't pay attention to everything City Council does all the time. And I don't. And, you know, but the other, I'm just saying that proposal in my memory was very expensive compared to the causeway in itself, without the bridges. Very, very expensive.
Yeah, it was a fair bit cheaper than the bridge. The bridge version was the most expensive. I think Eric had the numbers at 15 million, Eric, originally on the bridge?
Yeah, the bridge option, that cost wouldn't have changed much since last year. Can I just shed light on a couple of comments?
Certainly.
As far as the settlement goes, the existing causeway is a minimal amount above existing bridge. In fact, it's above water level, but it's below the existing roadways. So the settlement comes from going 3 times that high, because to get over these structures, the clearance that we've selected is what we're going with. That's where you get that excessive settlement, because yes, it's 3 times the thickness. The other thing is, if you would have paved your gravel temporary causeway right after placing it, you would have been able to see how much it moved. So you can't say it didn't move. I can't tell you how much it did move, but certainly, and that's one reason why you've got the 2-year time frame, so you're taking up most of that movement. So it's quite likely that the existing one did not settle very much relative to what we're talking about.
That's because we built it.
Okay, I don't want to take any more of your time. I was concerned about the amount of money that the council is putting into the causeway or the park bridge or whatever, that it is there. And I don't know how much more money that's going to bring into us. Is it going to pay off? That's my concern. So we've got a lot of infrastructure to fix, so I think we should be careful with our bucks. And I don't say do something, I don't say you don't let things settle. I build a lot of buildings, I've done it, I've been there. I know that things settle. I know you gotta make the base first. I'm just saying that although the lake has mud at the bottom, it's a mud bottom, it still can be, where we put the new piece in there, it never moved with all the trucks. Like it never moved to show you saw it was a terrible mess or anything. It didn't happen. And so I'm saying if the causeway is widened, I would expect something similar to that if you do what they did in that chunk they put in the middle when the PCU was built.
Okay.
Okay.
Your concerns are duly noted. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Any further questions from the gallery? Mr. Jones?
Yes, if you're going to consider boat traffic in the lake with restrictions, I want you to consider how you're going to enforce those restrictions and also the cost of that.
So your question is how we enforce restrictions?
Yes.
Okay.
On water.
Okay, I'd ask that today, and the RCMP have the ability to do that. So they would be enforced by the RCMP. Mr. Maxwell?
How many feet of lake shore does the city not own, control?
I have no idea. Would anybody?
My question is, you should be able to say no boats until you solve this problem you have in front of you. Because you own the lake shore. How it's going to get the boat if you don't let them cross your shore?
Your worship?
I own 82 feet.
It depends, Your worship, it depends on the landowner along the shore. The city owns the majority of it. Some landowners, as Councillor Wall would and Councillor Dreger, they own part of it. We don't control that. That's theirs.
I'm just thinking, there's 7 houses in Wilkes and Crescent that own to the lake. And the balance of Wilkes and Crescent, the city own a walking path. So you own behind their houses, you can put a walking path in. You own the land. So we want to go with 7 houses to worry about. Am I right?
So what's the question?
So what was...
We know how his vote was.
Sorry, what was the question, Mr. Maxwell?
My question is, if the city owns all the lake shore, does that mean you control whether boats can go on the water or not?
If we owned all the lakeshore, yes, we would. We control access, you control who goes on there.
So only the 7 people that have, besides Mr. Wall.
Any further questions?
Again, as a resident of Crescent Road, I'm directing my question now to the boating and the usage of Crescent Lake for other activities. Mr. Jones actually did raise the question of enforcement of the boating on Crescent Lake, and it was pointed out that was our CMP. So that answered that question quite well. There was issues raised regarding environmental and safety issues. Environmental being zebra mussels, one of them.
Sorry, Mr. Blanchard, what's the question?
The question is, do the zebra mussels only attach themselves to power boats? They don't attach to kayaks and canoes that are being transferred from one waterway to another?
That's a great question.
That is a good question. I have no idea about zebra mussels, what they attach themselves to.
That was one of the issues that was raised, was zebra mussels for not allowing power boats on the lake.
Yeah, that was the issue that conservation raised, correct?
So therefore, if you're taking your canoe from Gimli to Crescent Lake, you are more than likely able to transfer zebra mussels in that
Without
scenario.
a doubt.
Interesting point, Mr. Blanchard. Thank you.
Another issue regarding the canoes and kayaks, they're used on every river and lake system in Canada. And they are used in conjunction with power boats on every river and lake system in Canada, including canals and locks. So why should they be banned on the Portage Crescent Lake?
Sorry, why should which be banned?
Why should the boats be banned on Crescent Lake when they're used in conjunction with canoes and kayaks in every other river and lake system?
You're talking about power boats.
Power boats are used on St. Lawrence, along with kayaks and canoes, on the Mackenzie River, along with kayaks and canoes. Why would you ban one and not the other on the Crescent Lake?
Well, canoes don't make a whole lot of noise. Kayaks don't make a whole lot of noise. That would be a couple of the reasons. They typically don't leak any oil into the water. They don't usually scare ducks and geese. There's a whole bunch of reasons.
Okay, my further comment to that is Harley motorcycles being driven down the Crescent Road make more noise than the power boats.
Yeah, we don't regulate Harley Davidsons.
Okay. Final comment, you were the ducks and geese, the welfare of the ducks and geese being scared off of the lake. Every annual fireworks on Canada Day scares the hell out of them.
You're right, I see that.
And yet we condone that.
So what's your question?
My question is, why are we condoning that for one day a year, but not going to allow power boats and the noise level there?
Yeah, that's a tough question to come up with an answer for.
It's a valid question, though, and there should be an answer. Why are we allowing one and not the other?
I don't know. I guess because fireworks have been around for a long time. It's once a year.
Power boats have been around for a long time.
Okay. So what's your next question?
I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
One question regarding the causeway, and I looked at the presentation. I wasn't aware of what was happening. My question now is, Portage La Prairie trying to vie with the City of Winnipeg to create their own version of Confusion Corner on Royal Road South? Royal Road South?
I hope not.
That's my last comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from the gallery?
You having fun here?
Pretty much, yeah. I hope everybody else is too. Well, if there's no further questions, I want to thank everybody for being so patient this evening and coming out. And we are adjourned at 8 o'clock.